Happy Independence Day. So we know there's lots and lots of reasons to celebrate, right? The 4th of July. And yes, maybe it's to have a good barbecue. I don't know if maybe you have some barbecue plans this afternoon or on Tuesday. But why do we celebrate? Well, again, I think, if we had kids here this morning, I was going to talk today about, the 1776, right? And all that happened there, right? So I'm assuming most of us know all of that, right? The separation from the Kingdom of Great Britain. But maybe I've got some other facts that you are unaware of. So we know on July 4th was when the Second Continental Congress unanimously adopted the Declaration of Independence. But the actual vote for independence actually happened 2 days earlier. July 4th has been seen as the birthday, but July 2nd was apparently when the actual vote was. And then did you know that July 4th was not the date the Declaration was actually signed? According to the National Archives, delegates began signing the Declaration of Independence on August 2nd. So now if you need another reason to have another barbecue and a big family gathering, you've got another date, August 2nd. And it wasn't celebrated right away, although it was somewhat. So the first anniversary of the Declaration's adoption, John Adams wrote this to his daughter, describing the last-minute festivities in Philadelphia. He says, yesterday, being the anniversary of American independence, was celebrated here with the festivity and ceremony becoming the occasion. The thought of taking any notice of this day was not conceived until the 2nd of this month, and it was not mentioned until the 3rd. So despite its last-minute nature, Adams remarked in this letter on the brilliancy and splendor of Philadelphia's first 4th of July celebration. So according to the Library of Congress, the 4th of July celebrations didn't really become widespread until after the War of 1812. So it was quite a while, right? And then celebrations kept going, becoming what the Library of Congress calls the most important secular holiday on the calendar by the 1870s. So what is the most famous part of the Declaration of Independence? So if I would ask you or maybe anybody, so what does the Declaration of Independence say? Some people could say quite a bit of it, right? I think Mark has my Mark has quite a bit of it memorized just from teaching it, for so many years. But what's one of the most famous sentences of the Declaration of Independence and perhaps all of history, right? This next slide, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident. And then again, we can continue on, right? We know Thomas Jefferson wrote this, right, in 1776, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? So we know all those different things, and I was going to talk a little bit to the kids about that too, of just that all men are created equal, and just kind of talk about that a little bit of, okay, well, let's look at a picture of our founding fathers. Oh, wait, yes, it was all fathers, absolutely, right? And it was all Caucasian fathers. But again, that was who was, in power at that time, and it would make perfect sense. Although I truly feel that, obviously, I'm guessing, I shouldn't say obviously, but some of the women, right, certainly had some, you come home from work. So how was your work today, hon? Well, it was tough. We're writing this document called the Declaration of Independence, and here's some wording. And can't you see as the wife is scooping mashed potatoes onto the plate? Well, honey, what if you say this? Or don't forget about this, right? So women certainly have had, I think at least they would have had some kind of influence as things go. But then as you go through, and again, as we see that, we go, oh, okay, so we had the right idea, but maybe we weren't quite there yet, right? Because even as that all men are created equal, there were slaves right down the road, basically, right? So we have to think about all those different things again, of that these are things that we all, I think, agree to and aspire to, that everyone is created equal. All people are created equal. Then we just kind of have to, okay, how is it that we can truly manifest that stuff in an amazingly wonderful credo and idea that we have here? How is that we can make that, again, more biblical of everyone involved? I saw an interesting article in Time magazine by Jason Steinhauser about the Declaration of Independence. And he says, we are offered an opportunity to cast the old American story aside and forge a new one. And again, I don't want to toss things away, but I want to take those ideas and be able to work with those, right? But wait a minute, what do we really want for the country, right? For each of us? Not based on, he continues, not based on a static foundation of facts passed down to us from founders, but on a new set of beliefs about human rights and human dignity that can propel us forward in the decades ahead. And I thought that was really an interesting way of kind of looking at some documents that have been around for a really long time and for the most part have served us well. But again, we just want to make sure that we are using those documents and those beliefs to be able to make sure that we're fully embracing all of humanity, and I believe, in turn, the Gospels, right, of what we are told, what we see over and over, and then especially in the New Testament, right, of how Jesus treats everyone equally, women, people from different ethnicities, people from different countries that are perceived, right, Samaritans, right, that are perceived as being less than. How is that we can all work towards that to make us a unified nation? So that's kind of some things I wanted to kind of think about. And then as part of that, I kind of naturally, for whatever reason, went to a TV show. So I am read some scriptures today, and we'll be talking about obviously much more when we are talking and when we're sharing in communion. But I am kind of moving away very differently how I normally do. Maybe that's why I have such a headache this morning. That I am moving away from what I normally do as a sermon, and I'm actually talking about a TV reference. So I will say that I've had several years ago, and I don't even know how many it's been, 6 or 7 probably, I preached on Elvis. And I used Elvis as many different examples of various things. And I've had several people that have said to me since, I still remember that sermon on Elvis. And that thing stuck with me because it was just so different. So I pray that this today also, even though it's not directly biblical, I think it absolutely continues the principles of Jesus' teachings. So whether you've ever seen this TV show, Ted Lasso, or not, I hope that there are going to be some things that, again, will really just stick with you today. So Ted Lasso, I think, is more than just a feel-good TV series. There were 3 seasons. They were on Apple Plus and Apple TV Plus, and they say that's it. We'll see if there's going to be a 4th season, but they say that there's only the 3. And I think it was a full-on demonstration of the power of kindness and the power also of positive thinking, but I really think about just kindness. And you think about that and you go, remember how, what did they say about Seinfeld, right? It's a TV show about nothing, right? And I really think, though, that Ted Lasso is a TV show that just is about kindness. I mean, it's about many things, accountability, all different kinds of things. But I really think, and you think, boy, how could that be a popular TV show? Kindness, that's kind of boring, isn't it? Like being nice all the time, right? But it wasn't. So co-star, co-executive producer, and co-show developer Jason Sudeikis has all these different little credos and idle observations that really bettered, I think, the worlds of the people that were in the show. So if you haven't seen the show, I was disappointed at first because I thought it was going to be a lot about soccer, football, right? English football. And it really wasn't. There were some, certainly, scenes, but a very small percentage of that. And it was all just about what happens beyond, outside of the pitch, right? What happens outside of that? And what happens to developing these players? And so it starts out with a bunch of different people that all have their own agendas. One woman wants to just ruin the club. She's the owner because her husband had that's all he had loved, she thought, And then several of the players thought they were like the most important player, right? So almost everybody had their own little agendas and their own just kind of look out for number one, which again we see so often. But little by little by little, just the kindness, the decency of this one man, Ted Lasso, this American coach who comes over and is supposed to teach this fictitious team, Richmond, how that just permeates everything about the team. Yes, of course, they end up a better team because they're playing together and they're listening to each other and caring about each other. But that's so secondary compared to just the lives that are touched. We think of it as paying it forward, right? That kind of a thing of that we try to be kind and we try to be decent. We're Christians. We go with what it is that we feel that Jesus is calling us to do and live that example of a life. And then we pray that just continues to go on and on. So anyway, I just had a couple of the things that he has said that just really struck me throughout the 3 seasons. And I'm going to try not to give spoilers just in case you do want to see the show. Now, I will tell you that the language is bad. So if you don't like the F-bomb, which I don't, it took me a really long time, several episodes, to just kind of get past that. And there's one character who has a heart of gold and is beloved, but literally every sentence he says, Roy Kent, has the F-bomb in it. So if you can kind of get past that, and again, I was thinking, boy, Jason Sudeikis, man, couldn't you have made this without? But at the same time, what I like about it, as much as I dislike that particular word, is that it was very true, right, to that's the secular world that we're living in. There is some really bad language out there. There's some really people that think only of themselves. There's, all these different things. And so that really was kind of part and parcel. I don't know whether that was his intent or not, but it really does make it almost, more realistic, right? But that you still can see that even though this person says these things or whatever, you still can see that there's good there, right? So anyway, I'm going to try not to give any spoilers. So the first one is be curious, not judgmental. Be curious, not judgmental. Well, again, you'll see that supposedly Walt Whitman said this originally. I haven't had a chance to fact check that yet. But be curious, not judgmental quickly became one of the show's most memorable lines. And it was one of my favorite parts of the series, and I think I've even shared this as an illustration before. But I'm just going to talk my personal what spoke to me, just about 2 of these, and the rest I'm just going to go quickly. But this is one of the longer ones. So this was one, again, that Ted Lasso comes across super nice. He's got this drawl, right? And so this former owner of the club, Rupert, right, who's kind of, I suppose, the bad guy if there is anybody there. But again, they do a great job of just kind of showing his humanness and kind of working around that. But anyway, so Rupert challenges Ted, the main character, the American coach, to a game of darts. And there's a really, really large prize of what that will be. Not monetary, but of something with the soccer club that really did make a difference. And so he challenges him. And again, if you have a chance, you really need to just pull this up on YouTube. We can't, because if we show YouTube, we've done this before, it pops us right off the live stream, and I didn't want to lose our friends watching. So just YouTube Ted Lasso dart ball game, right? But they're doing that, and they're playing darts, right? And it's in a bar. The whole bar is just kind of watching, and they know Rupert is really good. Rupert is this real rich, club owner. And then there's Ted Lasso, who nobody really thinks is any good. He just kind of got there from America, doesn't know what he's doing, and so they start doing this dart ball game, right? And it's pretty close, playing darts. And then at the very end, then Ted has this little soliloquy, and he just says, "You know what? I have found." He said, "Let's see if I wrote down some of it. He says, the guys that used to bully me never learned the importance of curiosity and instead judged everyone and everything. And so he said, you know what, Rupert, all you had to say was just ask me a couple questions like, hey, Ted, do you play a lot of darts? And I would have said yes. And you can see Rupert going, oh, I just kind of assumed that you didn't know what you were doing, that you weren't any good. And then Ted goes on and on. You know what? If you would have asked me, hey, so how did you learn to play darts? I would tell you that my dad and I, that was our thing, that we would get together and we would, right? So he goes through all of these different things, and then turns out he's this phenomenal dart player and ends up, of course, winning the game. But that comment just really struck with me, is how often is that we just make judgments about people, of what we heard about them or what they look like, how they talk, right? And we just assume whatever it is we assume, but we make judgments about them. So again, if you have a chance, just watch this because it's just such an interesting and very, I think, important life lesson for each of us to remember. All right, next one. Forgiveness is freeing. Forgiveness is freeing. So forgiveness is a huge, huge part of Ted Lasso. And again, I could find all the scriptures about forgiveness in the scriptures, and you know a lot of them, and they're certainly worth looking at a second time. But forgiveness, right? There's so many different times in here where we can look at these characters, those of us who've watched the show, and we know what they've done. And yet we still are kind of like, yeah, forgive this person, except for maybe Rupert. I don't know if there's any Rupert dislikers out there, right? But again, when you see it on a TV show, it's different, isn't it? Because we don't have an investment in it. And we kind of want things to work out, right? Because it's a TV show. We want things to work out. And so again, if we can kind of step back from our own lives and see how other people maybe would view our lives, and think, you know what? Yeah, they probably are really rooting for me. Like, I need to do this. I need to show this forgiveness. Revenge is another theme that's in Ted Lasso. Again, that's kind of this Rebecca story, this team owner who wants to sabotage the team, and that's why she hires this coach that she perceives is going to be bad, right? But then he doesn't, and through his kindness, then you can see it just eating away at her, of just, I'm trying to do all these things to sabotage, but yet this guy's such a great guy, and look how it's going to affect all these other people. But it just takes a while for her to understand that. How many in our lives can we look at that and go, man, I'm really trying to get revenge on this person. I don't really say it that way, but if I really look deep down, that's what I'm doing. But how many other people are going to be hurt by this, right? To take time to do that. And again, to also realize again that doesn't help us either, right? That we also get hurt by holding on to those feelings of revenge, those feelings of, I'm not forgiving you, I was wronged, right? And we've talked about that these last couple weeks, about that power of forgiveness, that freedom in forgiveness. One of the ones that you see a lot of memes on is this next one, right? Anybody, what is this one? Be a goldfish. Be a goldfish, right? So Sam Obisanya is one of the players, and he makes a mistake at practice. Another player who, again, starts out being a real jerk. By the end, his story arc is he learns, he grows, and then he becomes one of the leaders of the team. But in this point at the beginning, he just is trying to belittle everybody because he's so insecure. So he makes fun of, in front of all the other players, this Sam who had made this mistake. And so Coach Lasso calls him over and he says, be a goldfish, Sam, be a goldfish. And the point of it was, I think, right, is that the short-term memory of goldfish, right, makes them the happiest animals on the planet, some say. And so to kind of remember that, of, you know what, if something happens that goes wrong, that you're embarrassed about something, you make a mistake, you've got to let that go. And again, that's biblical, right? Not be a goldfish, but it's biblical, right? Of letting that go, of trusting that God in Jesus, through Jesus, will forgive us. And starting again, to go, right away, to start fresh, instead of letting that eat away at us. And how many of us do that? That we just keep thinking, there's a word for that. When you keep going back and over those same thoughts. Ruminating thoughts. Yep. where you just keep going back and forth over that mistake and you just cannot let it go. And maybe the other people have forgiven you long ago, but yet you can't, right? So getting rid of those kind of ruminating thoughts, starting fresh. So be a goldfish. Now this one I did fact check, by the way. Is it true that goldfish have a 3-second memory? No, Ted Lasso, it is not. It's been disproven by several studies. Earlier this year, Science from Israel recently provided evidence to suggest that fish can remember things for 4 to 5 months. So I'm kind of like a fish. I've been forgetting things 4 to 5 months. So, but seriously, but it's not just that instantaneous. But still, it's less than most animals, I'm assuming, and certainly less than humans. So be a goldfish, right? You make a mistake, forget about it, move on. Kindness is powerful. Again, I mentioned this before, that I really, really feel like this was one of the strongest pieces of this whole series. And again, you see all the different characters. Again, whether you know them or not, I've seen the show. You all know people, right? All those people that in your lives are like characters in a show, right? If you think about that. And then we think about like Roy, the guy I was saying that always uses the F-bomb. There's Roy, right? And we see that inside he has such a beautiful heart. And then eventually he kind of works through that a little bit. Still swears, but yet he still is much more accessible, more outwardly loving. But it just takes time to work through life. How many of us have that, right? That we have certain characteristics that we have, some are good, some are not so good, that we need to kind of work through as well. One way we can do that is new life in Christ Jesus. But working through that, and then again, seeing that in other people, and to me, again, that was such an interesting thing when you watch a TV series, again, is that you can go, I really like this person, but this person could be my neighbor, this person could be somebody at work. And am I showing them the grace that I'm giving to Roy on TV, because I'm not invested in it, right? Am I given that same grace? So kindness is powerful. Ted Lasso's kindness, little by little by little, affects every single person in his town. I think I could say every one of the fans, certainly every one of the players, all these different people from one person's kindness, like waves that they ripple out. One quick one that I just thought I had to mention, because Ted Lasso fans would be mad at me afterwards if I didn't, but football is life. So Danny Rojas is a new player, and there's this other player I had mentioned, Jamie, who is still in his very selfish phase. And again, later we find out just how horribly he was treated as a child and in his father. And so again, we never know what the backstories are of people, right? And we need to be aware of that. It doesn't make things right. It doesn't mean that we are going to get walked all over, but it does help us to understand where they're coming from. Anyway, and so he is on the team, and he's kind of transferred this selfish guy at that point. And so they're like, man, we got a new player. I wonder what he's going to be like, if he's going to be the same. And out runs Danny Rojas, who runs around and has this huge smile on his face for almost the whole series. No, don't want to spoiler alert series 3, but almost the whole series. And he's upbeat and he's positive, and he says, Coach, thank you for letting me play. Football is life. And off he goes, being a team player, helping all the things that this other player wasn't. And again, just the whole spirit of the team just blossoms because of the passion that this one guy has that rekindles that passion in the team. So whatever your blank is life, Jesus is life, service is life, whatever it is for you, make that then be, part of your persona, part of your personality, right? Let that show. Don't try to hide that, right? Let that love and enthusiasm and passion for whatever it is in your life, whoever that is, let that be seen. Football is life. Another thing I wanted to just really briefly mention was this group of guys. So they started out, these are a couple of the coaches, most of them are coaches, but they started out where they'd have some different issues. I don't know what to do. And the two guys in front, Ted Lasso and then Coach Beard, they've been friends forever. And so they have this communication that you almost don't even have to talk, and the person that your best friend knows, right? Maybe you have that with somebody. But otherwise, they had issues that would come up and they weren't sure what to do. So they started this Diamond Dogs thing. And so it's kind of funny that they would howl, okay, Diamond Dogs, round up, ho, ho, and all these guys would come together, and then they would talk about things. And so Roy Kent, we've talked about Roy Kent, top left, if you can really see him. Of course, every time they would do it, he would leave the room, shut the door, say the F-bomb a couple times, walk away, right? I am not being a part of this. And for the other guys, it was a safe place that they could talk about the problems that they're having, the issues that they're having in their lives. And then eventually, by the last season, Roy actually comes in and asks for advice and gives advice then as part of that. I wrote down the number, and I can't remember where I wrote it down, but you all know this, right? That the number one population that it does not feel supported and does not share intimate thoughts, feelings, concerns, problems, fears, anxieties, depression, all those different things are the male population. And again, I'm not saying it to judge whatever. I'm just saying that is scientifically true. And maybe if you look at yourself or you look at your family, it's the same type of thing, for me at least, in my family, that I can see some of the women that we talk and we get together and we share and have therapists and do different that in the female side, and then not so much in the male side. So I just wanted to mention that as, again, one of the things that I think that this series did such a great job of is to show that, give that example, and show that it's okay. There are some places that are probably not safe spaces to share, your true feelings. But that it is helpful to be able to do that. And again, that's what I was thinking about men's breakfast, that you go and you sit and you eat and you can share, and you can be pretty darn sure that those things are not going to be talked about or shared, right, or gossiped about or whatever. But that you have some place that you can talk about anything that's on your mind. And again, we're going to try to get more of the men's activities here going. Once fall, summer, we're not going to get, I think, as many people, but to just try to get, again, that support there. So anything, guys, that we can do to help support you, I am here for counseling. And over my years here, I've probably counseled 10, maybe 20% of the men of this congregation and 80% of the women that have come in and asked for counseling, and that we've talked. So again, I'm here for you guys. And again, be here for each other as well. Find your Diamond Dogs group, or we'll create one here too, no problem. But, find some people that you can trust and trust them to open up a little bit and just see if that does help you feel better. Believe. This, I don't think any show has ever taken one word and made it so much. So this was a sign that was right above the coaching door, the staff's door, that Coach Lasso would put up, of believing. And again, we think about it in other ways, right? I mean, we think about it like they do, but we have a much larger scope of belief as Christians, right? But he would put that up as believe, like believe in yourselves, believe in each other, believe in goodness, believe in kindness, all those different things. And then at one point, one of the people who has this amazing story arc, who Ted Lasso sees great promise in him, and so he promotes him as a coach, but then things go south and go sour. And so he rips this sign down into small pieces, right? And then towards the end, then, the players then put these pieces back together, even as things have gone wrong, that they go, no, we do have this belief. And it's this very powerful moment when they tape together this sign again and put it back up. So we have that same type of thing, right? That we have belief. We have different beliefs, right? We have the beliefs that they talk about of believing in goodness and kindness and love and peace and all those things. But then we also have the belief of doing something about it, right? We follow that call of Christ to go out there and be the change, be the hands and feet of Christ, to make that choice, to believe and then do something about it. This is my other one that I just wanted to talk a little bit about, which was my favorite ones, and then we only have one other one after that. But this one is, don't judge someone by their lowest moment. I don't know why this one struck me so much, but it really, really did. And again, maybe for some of you, if you've heard this before as well. But this gentleman I told you about that ripped up the sign, right? He knew how much it meant to the whole team, this sign, this mantra of believe. And yet, in a moment of anger and just letting things build up, he rips this sign up. And then they later find it on tape. So they know for sure that it was him, right? And so the other coach, Coach Beard, gets very, very angry and upset. And I'm going to get revenge on this guy. We can't, right away. And then Ted Lasso says this. He says, I hope that either all of us or none of us are judged by the actions of our weakest moments, but rather for the strength we show if and when we're given a second chance. So at this point, right, that Nathan's story arc has come back around, that he's learned from his mistakes, and he has apologized, and he wants to come back into the fold, if you will. And then they find this video, right? And I love that idea of, we all made mistakes, every one of us, some of us horrible mistakes, that we have hurt people so badly with our words, with our actions, right? But let's not judge them by that, right? Let's judge them instead by giving them, not judge them, giving them, showing them grace and forgiveness, right? And a second chance. And again, talk about straight from our scriptures, right? I hope that either all of us or none of us are judged by the actions of our weakest moment, but rather for the strength we show if and when we're given a second chance. And again, we're often the people that can give that person a second chance, right? And that goes to my last point from this today. Redemption is always possible. And again, I besides the whole idea of forgiveness, or kindness, I think that is the other part, is part and parcel, forgiveness and redemption, right? And again, we look at all these different arcs in the story, if you've seen the show, but if you haven't, think about the people that you have given second chances to. Think about the people that have given you a second chance, right? That I did this again, right? Or I did this other thing that was one time, but oh my gosh, it affected so many people negatively. But yet, we are redeemed, right? We can be redeemed through their forgiveness of us, and most importantly, through the forgiveness of Jesus Christ, right? And then therefore, we have to go out, and I say have to go out, because I mean it, have to go out and show that same grace and forgiveness to others, right? We have to. It's not a choice as a Christian. We have to go out there. So we look again at this place we started, one nation under God. This is true as for us as a people, as individuals, right? That we are to show these different things: forgiveness, love, mercy, grace. And again, they're all in the scriptures, but I'm hoping maybe just for something different to hear today, that one, even just one of these little sayings, these little images will stick with you. And again, certainly, put it right there with the Bible scriptures as well. But just that little image, I hope, will maybe, again, just kind of be the impetus for us to continue forward, because it's hard. It's hard. It's hard to be in a nation where there's all these different people with all these different, ethnicities, all these different looks, all these different ideas, all these different things that are completely different from mine, right? But yet that's what we're called to do, is to work together as one people. All men and women, all people are created equal and have the rights of life, liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. Doesn't mean that everything's going to be given to you, right? And you're automatically going to be happy. Well, that's not fair. That person's making more money than me. Well, if you're doing the same jobs, yeah, that's not fair. But otherwise, if they're working harder, yeah, guess what? They are going to be. So you have the right to pursue that happiness, right? Each of us. So I pray that God grants that each one of us as individuals in our lives, in the bubble that we live in, right? Of the people that we can touch with our coworkers, our community, our church family, but then also outside of that bubble, right? That we as a nation can work together to make that dream a reality, that all men and women are treated equally, that all men and women have the same rights of life and liberty. I pray that will be so.